Hi, my friends. Welcome to Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm DC Gomez, your host, and also an indie author. I'm thrilled you're joining me today for another fun interview with a passionate author. We're going to kick off this show with an exciting reading, so let's get started.
My name is Tasha Keeble. I have written a book called Me Freedom, a Black American Woman's Break from Empire. I'm going to read a section from there, a chapter titled Pop Died, I Didn't Cry. Actually, it's a quote from Jay-Z. Let me get started. I hung up with Joyce and followed that pitiful non-response with 2 calls. First to your other daughter, Darlene, who buttressed me with that bitch. And then to Mama, whose upset surprised me. He was my husband, she said. And then I realized I had never pictured you two as a couple. I heard tears in her voice. After quiet, this country destroyed him. Softly, Mama began to speak. And her sympathy traveled the miles between Pine Bluff and Oakland and planted itself akimbo between me and this woman who was your wife. Her oh no's assuaged my anger. As I bent to hear her better, 2 gaps became clear. My understanding of your life with Mama, and another gap between me and my feelings about our family. I questioned why I had never thought of you two as a married couple. And more urgently, why had I never shed one tear, neither for you or Mama or the family we all lost? Her response eclipsed my intended point. I had meant to rage against Joyce, but Mama's sadness interrupted me. Frames began to flicker through my head, rising in and out of focus. You two, fine and green as the loblollies, cuddled beside Lake Pine Bluff, then whispering among Stuttgart shanties, giggling at the deacon mistaking the hallway door for the toilet. Uneven wisps tracked the corners of my thinking. A life I had perhaps dreamed. Bits of the story your wife had never conveyed to Darlene, Teray, nor me. Had they transmitted from Mama to me as we slept through the nights of my childhood? Her own dreams surely ripe with the memories of all she had lost by the time I began scuttling across Grandma's cold linoleum. What sense could I make of this life between Mama and you and the 3 children you had created together? Alongside my clumsy attachment to the mood as well as Mama's life with you, a curiosity overtook me. Not like a mournful daughter searching for what she had lost, but more like a filmmaker glancing over scenes cut from a production that had made it to the box office and fared moderately well. The edited scrap scenes remain as the pieces from the story no one ever chose to pass on. Feelings and facts remained equally distant. What happened? So much was absent, muddled, or stolen from the account of our lives that Joyce proved only the latest in a succession of folks who had handled us as if we didn't have the right to animated human qualities, continuity of narrative, rounded character, and emotional memory. I had been deprived of all of it. The most gut-punching revelation, my programming had made me an accomplice in my own robbery. I had subscribed to beliefs that ensured I effaced my own story. I had not inquired about you. I grew up ignorant of your life and never asked past what anyone voluntarily shared. James Baldwin insists on circling back to this American phenomena. In My Dungeon Shook, he insists that his father became so brutally holy precisely because he subconsciously believed what white people said about him. I appreciate how he explains this idea to a doe-eyed Nikki Giovanni in an interview from Ellis Heslip's 1971 production, Soul. You become a collaborator and accomplice in your own murder because you believe the same thing they do. Here he says murder as if the catalog of crimes amount to more than mere robbery. But then, murder is theft of one's life, is it not? But how could I believe the same thing those determined to rob me believed? How could that be true? What proof did I have against this possibility? How would I know? I could not process the idea of myself as collaborator against my own interests without observing it in someone else. I scanned my memory for instances of women who slunk away, demanding nothing, bore unfair burdens silently. I immediately thought of Men from Alice Walker's Third Life of Grange Copeland. A study from Gloria Ray Gales's No Crystal Stair led me to the book. I had read both while pregnant with Menon in 1993. I was shockingly isolated in my College Park, Georgia apartment, except for the good company of my miracle Amalia, who was almost 2 and speaking sentences by then. Big belly pregnant and bean and potato poor, I depended on a manipulative and callous man with whom I could not be open because I needed his help to survive and see my baby born healthy. As I now recall, I was too afraid to admit to Mama that I had gotten myself in a fix. But once I spilled the story, she hopped in her bronze BMW to drive from Oxnard to Atlanta with my 14-year-old brother Kofi to rescue me and both my babies in Atlanta. Mama picked up cousin Keisha in Pine Bluff to help her drive. Keisha looked like Jesus ascending the stairs to my College Park apartment. "I'm tired," she said before collapsing onto the flattened black futon. I could have told Mama and Keisha how much I felt like Mem that day. She, like me, had been terrified and alone and pregnant in Georgia. She had, in the first iteration of Grange Copeland's life, begun to disappear into the furniture. Each instance of neglect, usury, and diminution at Copeland's son Brownfield's hands sank Mem, like me, further into oblivion. Mem didn't roar, neither did I. She didn't ask for what she needed, neither did I. She didn't break down emotionally and say she couldn't take it anymore, neither did I. I instead maintained a flat disposition and took it all in as something I was built to endure and should be too ashamed to tell anybody about. Just like with Joyce. I acted with shame over what they had done. I had accepted deprivation, dishonesty, and blame as my load to carry. I had, like a mule, borne the weight of constant ill treatment on my back, as if I did not deserve better. I grew angry but did not respond. And like Joyce, they knew who they were, and apologized not a lick. Twist neither face nor tongue toward admitting the colossal weight of the wrong. This revelation led me to thirst for more about the roots of this troubling behavior of mine so that I might understand it and one day possibly live better. I needed to accept all that had landed me on Fruitvale, annoyed by missionaries I didn't know. I was wounded, growing angry because, old as I was too ill-equipped to defend myself or understand what in the construction of my emotional life led me to embrace anger and deny grief.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Minds of Authors. I'm so excited you guys are joining us today. I have the amazing Miss Tasha. Hello, madam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am so thrilled you're joining us. I'm excited about this book. Let's jump in. Tell us about it. How did this book come to life? What is it about? Give us a little more.
The book came to me, I think I had started it maybe around the beginning of 2016-ish, and it had kind of been an extension or a thread from another book that I was writing. I knew somehow that this one would be different. The other one was more sort of historical fiction-esque. What happened was I began to feel this sort of urge to kind of break away. It wasn't an urge. It was almost like something vital that if I didn't do it, I was going to be in serious trouble, right? That it's like one of those moments where you're like, I need to make a decision. My life is sort of dependent upon me sort of hitting this crossroad moment or this point where I'm either going to lean into where I know I should be going, or I'm going to go to the left and stay where I've been, associate with the more negative, where there was just a lot of comfort, but a lot of denial and dishonesty that was kind of eating at me. It became very, very serious, and I had grown really tired. And I said, you know what? Just tell the truth. Write the story that you need to write. I recently heard, what's the young woman's name who just won the award for screenwriting? I can't recall her name. It'll come to me. But she said, write the story that scares you to death, right? And this was a story that scared me to death. but it was one that I knew I needed to write because it was like, if I was going to grow into the person that I wanted to be, then I needed to take this step and stop monkeying around with my work, stop going this way and this way, not being able to finish things because I'm like constantly turning away from what was the truth all along.
This is a very raw piece. This is a very much in your face. I'm going to give you what I have. How are you going to take it? So to actually put it on paper, you started, you stopped, you started. How long did it take you to finish once you committed to it?
Once I committed to it, I'm trying to think of what happened was I had been sitting on this thing, and you'll see when you read the book, you'll see that I had been sitting on this fact that I could not process. It was the fact that my aunt had actually literally stolen my inheritance, right? And so that's how the book started. But I knew that I had been sitting on this thing for all these years, and I'm like, what is the truth in that? And why did I not respond to her? Why did I just get off the phone and say, I'm going to go away and not fight, not challenge, not just accept the fact that you have stolen not only my right to my father, but you've also stolen what he left me, what he had earned and what was mine all along my entire life. And it was just stolen. It took me years like to figure out the emotionality in that and the why. And then when I got honest about it, I was like, this is the thing that you need to write about. And so I had to go through the journey of like trying to understand it. I had to educate myself as well. And I had to break free from some of the thinking and philosophies that I had been holding that had been, a part of my experience, but that weren't necessarily a part of something that I came into naturally. I was taught these things. Sometimes people like women can associate, I think, can identify with a lot of this. I think people of color can identify with this. I think that different communities that find themselves marginalized, we're often asked to kind of step back and hide who we are so that other people may feel comfortable, so that they don't feel challenged in their thinking or their behavior. So we can include it as a part of like everything that's going on. I'm like, that price is just a little too high for me to keep paying. That was something I had to really, really unravel and really look at. I really did. And it was going through that process. So that was the meta narrative. So I wrote about what was happening with that. And I went through, in writing this, a period of not being able to sleep, of having my nerves completely racked, of like relapsing on alcohol, and having to go through that period of like hitting rock bottom emotionally, but also knowing that I was doing something that was going to be rewarding.
You went through a whole period of therapy and like purging all at once, trying to put this book together, which is amazing because a lot of people would have stopped. That's a lot of pain to dig up. That's a lot of emotions to bring up to the table. When you were going through this process, did you had a time you was like, I just want to stop?
No.
Okay.
There was a period when I wanted relief, right, from the feeling. And I may have acted out a little bit during that time. I give my parents credit for that, especially my mother, because my mother is kind of like, in some ways, she's emotionally not super brave, okay? Like a lot of our parents, right? They're not able to have certain conversations. But in life, my mother has been the most brave person I know. She's never really backed down from a challenge. She's been courageous. She's been daring. She's committed herself to going her own way, and kind of in spite of what people may say. That doesn't mean that it always turned out well, especially because she lived in a very insular community. And I mean, Pine Bluff, Arkansas is very small. It's like small town. If you're familiar with the area, it's just, there's not a lot of room for going outside the norm, but she has done that anyway and always has. My grandmother too. I respect their legacy in that area. I carry that with me. And so I do what I think my grandma would have done. I do what I think my mother would have done if she were of a different age, but she is of a particular age. And so I think it's just like a natural progression into the next wave of like freedom.
And you're right. There's a generation that was never taught and they're not comfortable talking about feelings. They're not
Yeah.
going to discuss it. They're not going to put it out there. They don't express this as we sometimes wish they could.
But they
Right.
have done amazing things shaping our world and trying to take these leaps of faith. So the fact that you honor your grandmother and your mother is beautiful and so
Yeah.
powerful. So when you're writing this
Thank
book,
you.
what genre will you put this?
It is memoir because it has to do with a certain period of my life, right? So technically it is memoir, but it's mixed genre in that, and I like the way Tara Westover describes memory. She talks a lot about how in the construction of memory, we remember things as we experience them. And we are kind of writing this narrative and living this narrative that we, in retrospect, sometimes have to pick apart, and it may not be the experience that other people had. But what I realized, because I've read a whole bunch of other people's ideas about memoir writing, and I never really wanted to write a memoir. I just didn't. I started out writing poetry, which wasn't very good. It was very hard. Poetry is extremely hard, and I'm always of the notion that I want to say as much as I can say, and I don't know that I can necessarily do that with poetry, not the style of poetry that I was writing. But my memoir is very much stream of consciousness. It's not structured linearly, right? It's not in a linear setup where it's like this happened and this happened and this happened. It's not going to happen like that. My life didn't happen like that. And so I kind of let go, and you'll see runs where I go through the stream of consciousness and go from one thing to another, but then return back in sort of like a jazz setup. And it's very much influenced by hip hop and being able to stack metaphors and other voices and other ideas and combine them and tell my own story. It is memoir, but it's a particular kind of memoir. It's very cultural, I think, very much so.
That is exciting. It is very fun to see a different take on it. And how do you bring it to life? What do you want people to get out of your story? What are you trying to do here?
Well, I've gotten a few responses, right? I've gotten a lot of responses. I've gotten responses from writer friends. I've gotten responses from friends, from family. And everybody says, you have clearly written something that it's intriguing. It's a page turner, right? Once I started, I didn't stop. It's thought provoking. And there was so much that I could resonate with. This is the response from other people. And they were also like, and I feel like I know you, which is funny to me. They're like, I feel like I know you on a very intimate level. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Is that right? I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm going to write in a sincere voice. And I'm going to write in order to connect with people. And I want them to think about the things that I have written, right? And I want what I have written to enrich their experience. And actually, I decided that in my not shying away from sort of dangerous topics, that hopefully the world that I would like to see has a better chance of coming to be. And if that's what can happen with this book, then I would hope that would be the end product.
Awesome. You have brought authenticity to a world through your worlds and opening up. And yes, the moment you open up your soul to a piece of your life,
yeah,
they're going to know you intimately. They're going to know a piece of you that you're like, oh, not sure if you're ready for that, but it's happening. Just be prepared.
Yeah, I know. I'm feeling very reluctant and I'm very bashful, which is like, the other thing is I can get overwhelmed by people. So I feel myself like, but it's okay. Because sometimes I'll come out. I'm like, my daughter's that way too. She'll come out and be like very social, but then she needs to take a break.
That's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you working on now?
I'm working on refining that piece of historical fiction, but I also am working on another book about the Elaine riot. Actually, it's called the Hoop Spur riots, and it was in Elaine, Arkansas in 1919. It isn't a very well-known incident. I think almost 300 people died. And there was an attorney who came from Little Rock and represented these men who were going to be put to death, and he saved their lives. And it was a labor conflict that was kind of masked as a racial conflict. Yeah, I'm very much interested in that, and I've kind of created characters to operate within that world. So I'm kind of excited about it.
It's very exciting. It's also fun to watch history come alive in books. So I'm like, yes. In your process of writing, what are some of the lessons you have learned?
Some of the lessons I have learned: to tell the truth, that I can write down the truth, right? And decide how much of that I'm going to expose in my editing process, but to always write down the thing that comes to mind. Don't be afraid to write it down and to not edit that piece until you can come back later and decide which parts you want to include and what you want to leave or take out. But to not edit the thought process, and like your first thought in art, I think is like the honorable one. The one that should be heard, right? It doesn't necessarily need to go out into the world as is, but I think that is the one that is most genuine, honestly. Yeah.
It's a way to stick to authenticity and be able to create that sound. So I love it. So,
Yeah.
Madame, brand new author who's trying to get into this world, what would you tell them?
I would tell them not to be afraid to work, to study, and to not stop the process of writing. That the biggest gift that they have is the gift of their own voice. But the difference, I think, between what I write and sometimes the people that I edit write and I give feedback to is that I say, you're imposing too much correctness on this. It's almost as if, and I write about this in my book, is that you have people on your shoulder and you need to thump them off. You need to write what's true to you and what's genuine. What is that monologue, that narrator in your head saying? That's your real voice. It's not the one that you project into the world. That's your ego, right? Listen to that one. My inner voice speaks in vernacular. I speak like standard American English right now. My inner voice does not do that, right? My inner voice cusses a lot and has like really, and that's the thing that people can actually relate to. Now I go back and edit so that it's not overwhelming, but people want to hear what you really think. So yeah.
And who you really are. Where are you coming from? I love it. So, Madame, where can people find you? Where they can find the book? Where they can learn more about you?
I am on Instagram here and there at Tasha K3I. I'm on Facebook. You can find my work if you just Google me. I have different pieces in Gawker, an old piece, and different magazines. I have a blog. If you Google me, you'll find a lot of stuff that I've written, and it's out there. My book found on all platforms. There's indie books, Target, Amazon, of course, Apple. Yeah, all the major platforms you can find the book. So
Awesome.
yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited about what's going to happen next.
We are excited for you as well. And before you leave us, we're going to go ahead and jump to our lightning round. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, let's see how you do. Soda or juice?
Juice.
Nice. Comedy or action?
Comedy.
City life or country life?
City.
Scooby-Doo or Snoopy?
Oh, Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
That's my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite.
Nice. Okay, here's your last one. Let's see how you do. If you could meet any famous person, dead or alive, who will you meet?
Toni Morrison.
Why?
I've just always followed her. I did my master's thesis on Morrison. I have followed her work all along. And she was one of the writers who actually tuned me into what language can do as far as like bringing a culture to the page. I've studied her work all along and read all of her books. And I think that Beloved is perhaps the greatest American novel ever written. So yeah, that is who I would like to meet. And I missed her. I have seen her before, though. I heard her read at Spelman when I was there. So, yeah, awesome. I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
That is beautiful. But It has been a pleasure to hang out with you, to talk to you. You're absolutely incredible. Do you have any closing remarks for us?
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm beyond grateful. I'm super grateful to my mom, to my daughters, and to all of the people who have supported me and And it's been kind of difficult, but I really, really just want to thank those, like I call them my ride or dies. They're incredible people. And I just want people to enjoy this book. If anything, read it and you're going to walk away going, It will leave. I mean, I read pieces of it myself and I'm like, wow, did I write that? I can't believe I said that. So, yeah. So, yeah, it's going to touch you in unexpected ways, I think. Yeah. And I hope that it enhances your experience.
Oh, that is beautiful and powerful, Madame. Thank you so much. Congratulations again to our listeners. Go ahead, pick up Miss Tasha's book, take a look at it, follow her all social medias. We'll be back next week with another exciting authors. Remember, if you're interested in supporting the creation of the podcast, go ahead, my friends, join our Patreon community at patreon.com/author DC Gomez. Bye, everyone. Have a great week.